Good morning and welcome to week one of Like a Good Neighbor. So, what you saw there was the fun that the team had and the leaders and all the volunteers with the kids for the past week. And it didn't just happen in a week, it started building up for 2 weeks before that. So, what a great effort and well done on that to everybody that was involved in it. And we put that amount of effort in because the next generation is that important to us. And it links in perfectly with our message of this morning and our series, which is Like a Good Neighbor. Because we know as a faith community that you guys need a break from your own children. So we acknowledge that need and we create a space where we can welcome them, they can have fun, and while they're having fun, meeting new people, they can get to know Jesus a bit better, and we invest in that relationship. So thank you to everyone that was involved in it. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Dirk van der Mesht, and I'm going to be doing the series for the next 2 weeks. My background is a background in sales. So we always like to have you leave with something practical in terms of what to apply and what to do. And you might sit there and you might say, well, I don't like sales, I'm not in sales, so it doesn't really connect with me. The reality is you are in sales. Guys, when you try and convince your wife why this is a good purchase, you are busy with sales. As a parent, if you're trying to convince your child why homework is a good idea, you're involved in sales. So in everything in your life, you're involved in sales. Getting that person behind the counter to do their job, that's sales, right? So I'm sharing with you so that we can get to what's important for us this morning. So if you look at sales and you speak to salespeople, you might think that to be good at sales, a prerequisite is a good product. Or you might think, no, I need a good range of products, because whatever that client wants, I need to be able to provide. So my background is 2 years of estate agencies selling properties and 6 years in the motor trade. So if you're in the motor trade, you think, well, I need this vehicle in different colors. The reality is you often confuse your client and lose your client because they're not sure what they're supposed to pick. So that's not the key to good sales. The key to good sales is knowing your customer. You might also think that knowing all of the information about my product is a requirement. Yes, it helps. But the key thing is knowing your customer, and specifically the need of your customer. You need to understand that person's need. It comes down to this: what matters most to the other person? If you can understand that, and you can show them how your product speaks into that need, you've done the deal. That's how your wife will think that that decision was her decision. Right? Let's just be honest this morning. That's what we love about Waypoint. We reveal everything. So you need to figure out what's important to that other person. So let me give you a hypothetical scenario. I like using hypothetical scenarios. So this is completely hypothetical. Let's just say Karen leaves the house in the morning. That's my wife. And she's put on the washing machine. She doesn't want to put the dishwasher on at the same time. And she says to me, Dirk, do me a favor. In 15 minutes time, just switch on the dishwasher for me. Everything's packed. Everything is ready. I don't know where that little soap goes. So everything is done. I just need to switch it on. Right. And then I get busy and I sort out the garage because I struggle to find tools. So I'm more effective at doing the tasks that Karen has set out for me. I might even change our insurance and save us 800 Rand a month on our budget. And I might even fix that, since my tools are now organized, that cupboard door that's been bugging her because it's skew and she has to wiggle it to close it properly. But I forgot to switch the dishwasher on. When Karen comes back into the house, I can guarantee you, despite all of these wonderful things that I've done, even things that are important to her, the topic of the day will be the dishwasher. Guaranteed, right? And I can see from your reaction, it's a completely hypothetical scenario, and you guys have got no idea what I'm talking about. But what happened in that moment? It's not about all these other things and things that are, from my perspective, more important that is now done. It's got nothing to do with that. But it's got everything to do with what's on the screen here, what matters most to the other person. The thing that mattered most to her was, I asked you one simple thing. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. You had to do one thing for me and you didn't do it. What happens behind the scene is what I've expressed to you, right? Because this is also never happened, where our wives think they infer, and telepathically we need to understand what the need is, right? No, she's expressed, she's made it clear, switch the dishwasher on, and I forgot about it. And there's no malintent, it's not important to me, it's just simply that I forgot. But what gets experienced by the other person is, what I wanted you to do was of so little importance to you that you didn't do it. Therefore, I don't mean that much to you. That's what's communicated. That's the reality of it. Just from understanding what's most important to that person. So, let me give you another example. When you discipline your child, they didn't do their homework, you got a note from the teacher, and you're like, you know what, this is it, to your room. If you have an introverted child, you've just created heaven on earth to them. They're like, this is the best thing ever. Nobody's going to bother me because I now have permission from my parents for you to leave me alone. No chores. I'm going to my room and I'm reading my book. Finally, I've got time to read my book. You need to understand your child's need. Right? And why is this important to us today? Because we're saying, if we all about, as a faith community, living out Jesus to other people. We want to be about what's important to Jesus. Why Jesus? Because Jesus came to give us a view of who the Father is and what's important to the Father. So if I figure out what's important to Jesus, I figure out what's important to the Father. And if I'm serious about being Jesus-like, Christ-like, and I'm about what He's about, then I'm more effective at living Him out towards other people. So that's why for us this morning, it's important to understand to God what matters most to God. Luckily, we get a snapshot, a view into a situation that played out with Jesus in front of a lot of people. We find it in Matthew, the first gospel in the New Testament, and we read in Matthew 22 this passage. One of them, the people in the crowd, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. So he asked what seemed like a valid question. The purpose, however, was not just to test Jesus, but to trick Jesus, to trip him up, to say to everybody and in front of everybody, this guy that is supposed to be the one that knows everything doesn't know what we know. He carries on, he says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" He's asking Jesus, according to you, what is most important to God? You say and claim that you're the Messiah, that you're the Son of God. So as the Son of God, what's most important to God? And what we need to understand is the context within which that question is asked, because we miss it. It's not our frame of reference, because we have the 10 Commandments and we have the New Testament. So for us, it's quite simple. For them, it's different. At that point, there was no New Testament. What they had was God telling them 613 things. And the majority of them is, I don't want you to do this. So he's saying, what's the most important one? You pick. So that's the context of this question. Out of all of these things, what matters most? And Jesus answers him and he says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And for the people that were there, this answer was no surprise. Because what Jesus does there is reference Deuteronomy 6. And what Deuteronomy 6 says is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with your soul, with all your mind." So Jesus is referencing the Shema. They call that prayer the Shema. Shema means prayer, but this is the prayer. The prayer that's been given to them, that they're familiar with, because that passage then continues to say, take this prayer, teach it to your children, share it with them. When you're at home, share it. When you're on the road, share it. So everywhere, share it. When you get up in the morning, think on it. When you go to bed at night, think on it. So the whole time, think about it. It goes on to say, tie it to your hands, write it on your foreheads, and write it on your doorframes. So in everything, everywhere, the whole time, be reminded of this fact that God is God, that God is one, and that you should love Him with all your heart, with your soul, and all your mind. So Jesus says something that was very familiar to them, which they expected. They expected Jesus to say this. To put it into context for you, they would go to a scribe that would on a small scroll write that prayer. They would then take that prayer and put it in a little metal box and put it on their doorframe and nail it to their doorframe. And that's called a mezuzah. And if you watch The Chosen, you would see the Israelites walk in, and before they walk through the door, kiss their fingers and then touch the doorframe, because it's the prayer that's there. And they do the same thing when they leave the door. So it's coming into my house, this is the truth that I'm living out in my house. And when I leave my house, this is the truth that I leave my house with. It changes everything. So that part wasn't strange to them. But then Jesus affirms this, and he says in the next verse, this is the first and greatest commandment. So everybody's happy with that. Everybody is comfortable with it. But this was just the setup, because the person that asked the question expected that answer. But before he could direct the narrative, something unexpected happens. Jesus continues. He says this, and the second is like it. There was no numbering, there was no ordering to these 630. Jesus says, wait a second. There's a second. And the second is like it. And he says, love your neighbor as yourself. Now this is important, because what Jesus says there is the second is like the first one. In nature, it's of the same nature. You can't separate these two, but you can't look at them one without the other. They're interconnected. It helps the blue people to understand it's not a list where priority is number one and second. It's saying they're as important. It's also helping us yellow people to understand it's not do this and if you have time, do that one. It goes together, both of them. But what we need to understand is that Jesus didn't make up a brand new second law. That wasn't the surprising part, because what Jesus does is he quotes Leviticus. So when Jesus says that, he quotes what they knew. But he just gives it a different position in terms of importance. Jesus says in verse 40, he says, all the law and prophets hang on these two commandments. He's saying to the person that studied the law, he said to him, everything that you've studied, your life's work is reduced to these two things. Love God, love people. So when we say what's important to God is to love God and to love people. It's so simple, yet it's so difficult. And like it is in everything that Jesus says, it's simple, but at the same time so challenging. These two things are separate, but they are connected. You have to say these two things together. And what's interesting about these two things is the first is about loving God. If I had to measure how much you love God, it's connected to how much time do you spend in prayer? What does that prayer look like? How much time do you spend in God's Word? You don't do that in a coffee shop. You don't do that in a meeting. I can't measure that. I can't see it. The second one, even if you tried to, you couldn't hide it. So where the one is impossible to see, the other is impossible to hide. And because they're interconnected, what we can infer and deduct is to say that if I don't see the second one, then I need to wonder if the first one is really there. Because they're interconnected. And the church through the ages have struggled with the second one immensely. We've got it right here and there, and there's been moments where we did it brilliantly. And examples of that would be the first instances of hospitals were started by the church. The way, and luckily we've got a first service, so they were able to help me with the vocabulary. But the widows and the orphans, the way we look after them, in terms of as a modern day society, was set down and brought to us by the church. The way they looked after the widows and the orphans. So as a church, we've been able to get it right. And why is it important to do it as a church? Because we're talking about not about an organization or about a building church. We're talking about a faith movement, the body of Christ, where Jesus says, and we did that series a few months ago, ecclesia, my body, my movement. As a movement, we need to do it because there's this fine balance between individually and corporately. We need to love people. I can't do one or the other. Personally, I need to live out how God loves people. But as a faith community, we also need to live out how we love other people. The key thing is that when we say we want to be like Jesus, when people interact with us, they need to have an experience of Jesus through the way that I interact with them. Practically what that means is when somebody leaves my interaction, do they feel better for it? Did I make them a better person? So when we ask that question, because we say, I want to be more like Jesus, we say, what's important to Jesus? And what's important to Jesus, that's clear from what we're looking at now, is how do we love God and how do we love people? So what we can do is paraphrase it in a way and say, your neighboring is a reflection of your christening. The way that you love other people, that you care for other people, that you are present in your community is a reflection of how much you are like Jesus. The way you live out your faith, the way you live out that relationship that you have with the Father. It needs to flow out somewhere. Otherwise, we're like a sponge that just drinks in liquid. There needs to be a moment where it's squeezed out so that we can receive more. And that's why this is important for us, because what's true for us needs to be true for the church. We are supposed to be good neighbors. And in our communities, it needs to have the impact where our community comes to us and say, and they won't say it to us, they'll say it to their wife or their husband or a friend. You know what? I still don't agree with everything that these guys say. But man, do I love how they love other people. That they've benefited and their friends and their children have benefited from an interaction with us. That they say, I'm still not 100% on board with this whole Jesus thing. But I love what they do. And that opens up the door for more. And that's why these two things are so important. And that's exactly why years ago, even though it feels like the other day, but it's years ago we started Mandela Bay Community Movement. And the whole idea was to get people off their seat and get people to make a difference in other people's lives. And like most things, it developed and it grew into Love Nelson Mandela Bay, where we are now. And that's why Friday we had Mandela Day and we mobilized communities and we said, let's just go and clean up. And we cleaned up in spaces where we're not even involved in through our network. We had a team that cleaned up in Barkens Valley, which is Happy Valley, right? For the younger generation, go and Google it. It's a place there by the sea, Happy Valley. It's not so happy anymore, but it's still a great place. And we went and we cleaned it up. And we do this because we call to neighbor well. And as part of, that's just one component of what we do with Love NMB. But because we want to impact communities, there's no way that we can do it on our own. So we need to partner with other people and other organizations. And one of those organizations is Saka Amatuba. And Michelle, that's a part of Waypoint, is currently heading up Saka Amatuba. So what I thought this morning was to invite Michelle up on stage to come and share with us what it is that Saka Amatuba is all about, why and how they do what they do, and how we can get involved and make a difference and be part of what they do. So help me welcome Michelle to the stage. Thank you. Michelle, welcome. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Michelle, Saka Amatuba, it's not your average name for an organization. Is there a specific reason why you picked Saka Amatuba?
Well, Saka Amatuba means creating opportunities. And our NGO, it's a small NGO. It's also within this lovely community center. We focus on providing skills and support to the unemployed youth. You probably know that the staggering statistics, the official statistics are that the unemployment rate for youth is about 47%. And that's a staggering amount of young people without hope. They feel hopeless and they just need to feel that they matter. And that's where we come in together with all our partners.
And I want to link in with what Michelle is sharing. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and their takeaway on where our country is and unemployment was our young people just don't want to work. And often it's because we engage with problems at arm's length. So we don't understand and wrestle with the problem. What we need to understand with the current young people that are unemployed is they grew up in a home, for the majority, where neither one of their parents had permanent employment. So they grew up in a house where nobody worked, where their siblings aren't working. And then we say to them, why don't you just go and get a job? As if it's normal and it's natural. For them, it's not normal and natural. It's supposed to be. And it creates this barrier inside of them that a job isn't something for me. It's for somebody, but it's not for me. And I don't, in the foreseeable future, see the opportunity to have gainful employment. That's permanent. So that's part of what you guys, a core part of what you speak into, that it's not just a job readiness program and a skills transference, but it goes deeper. Do you just want to share a bit about your approach and the angle that you come into addressing this problem?
Yeah, so as Dirk said, there's a definite skills transfer because if you don't know how to behave, what ethics are important um, to step into a job, how would you know how to be the best version of yourself when starting a new job? So it's important to develop our youth's character and mindset about that they actually do matter, and that anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And that is why we call our youth beneficiaries that enter the program, we call them Zimmies. Um, and that comes from a word called Zimisele. We are determined. So Sakamatuba creates opportunities for those who are determined. And it's so important to us to speak that positivity into these young people before they even enter the program, to show them that you do matter to us, and that you can achieve anything you put your mind to. And to, yeah, let's put it to you that way.
And what I've also seen, because I've looked at a lot of different programs, is that within how you approach this month of journeying with your Zimmies, is you bring in a different depth to your program, which goes beyond what your average social intervention does. And maybe share a bit more about that.
Yeah, when I decided, or it wasn't really my decision, I was moved to join Sakamatuba, and I think the most incredibly rewarding gift was that Sakamatuba operates from a foundation of um, what's the right godliness, and that our heart and our intention is to bring our youth in relationship with Jesus, and we can do that openly without having to be a this and a this and a that, as most NGOs need to operate from. So that is an incredible gift, and that's the only reason I joined Sakamatuba. And integrated into our program is the building of character, changing of mindset. Um, we very intentionally integrating starting point within our program, and our partners, yeah, under this umbrella are all involved. So it's a ecosystem that's contributing to the development of these very beautiful, hungry to be heard, to be seen young people. And then what is also very, very important is to develop a sense of community and neighborliness. Neighborliness. I got it right the first time. What's happened? Um, so a very important component is the practicality of our program during the months that they are with us. They got to do community work, and that's where Dirk and Love NMB comes in and plays a very important role, because we need to care for our community. We need to instill that also within our youth, that it's not just me being owed something, because I think a lot of these young people have that mindset, but to become a contributor instead of just a consumer. And that's a very, very important role that we all, as Sakamatuba, as our direct partners, as our business partners, our donors, everybody needs to play.
And lastly, in terms of us listening that are excited about what you are doing, what are your current needs in terms of where you are with your program, how we can partner with you in being more effective?
Yeah, so very importantly, to enhance that practical side of our program, we need businesses, companies to provide job shadowing, short-term job shadowing opportunities, short-term internship opportunities, community service opportunities, so that we don't put all the pressure here on Dirk, our yellow colleague. Um, we we need mentors and coaches. In Waypoint, we've got lots of people. Some are retired already. They have the skills, this experience. And you know what? If I look at our last semi group that they currently finishing their program, what's what stood out for them was the fact that one on one, someone was interested enough in their life to spend time one on one and just listen and coach and guide. It meant the world to them because nobody ever really cares. They think, because people are in poverty, they fine, they can cope. But everybody, and especially these youth, have this dream, they've got dreams and they've got this need for self actualization. And we often just think safety needs is enough. And that has stood out specifically with our last group. So, yes, we definitely need mentors. Don't think that, oh, I don't know what to do. Mentorship and coaching, you don't need special skills. You just need to be you and bring that experience and that love that Jesus wants us as neighbors to to demonstrate and to give back. And just to mention that I said we are a small NGO, so our focus is specifically on our neighborhood. And there are thousands upon thousands of unemployed people within a 5 kilometer radius. So that is where our focus lies. And we cannot do it without the support and the help of our colleagues here within the Waypoint Center, but also without you. So, yeah.
Let's give Michelle a hand. Thank you very much. So that gives you a practical insight into an organization that's here making a difference in our community, moving that needle on youth unemployment. And Michelle said she needs people that are part of businesses, organizations, and groups that can create a job shadowing internship opportunity for them to be exposed to a professional environment with what they're talking about theoretically, to go and apply that practically, so that we set people up for success and we don't just tick boxes and say we've taken 20 people through a program and now we're done. But then also what's important is there's an opportunity for mentoring. And what we need to understand, that mentoring isn't, I don't have a degree in mentoring, so really Michelle isn't talking to me. There is no degree for mentoring. What you're doing with your children is mentoring. What you're doing with your colleague at work that's going through a difficult time is mentoring. There's no ray coming from the heavens and God calling you into mentoring and now like I'm on a journey of mentoring. It's you are called to make disciples. And what's amazing is you can make a disciple in terms of how somebody manages their finances. That's also part of discipling. And what we need to understand is that the average person that Michelle puts through this group is somebody that grew up usually in a dysfunctional home. More than 64% of our young people in South Africa don't know what name is either written on their birth certificate for the father or who their father is. So when we think mentoring, we think of something weird and strange, but it's as simple as the role that your parents fulfilled in your life that somebody didn't experience, because their single parent is doing multiple jobs to make sure that there's food on the table. And they lack that person that loves them enough to tell them the truth, to say that this isn't good enough, you can do more. It's a loving conversation of, what are you struggling with? Why are you struggling? Let me give you a different perspective on that. Because as people, we are perfectly set up to experience the results that we currently experience in our life. So if we really want to change our lives, we need perspective from outside to give us a different perspective. And that's what mentoring does, is sitting down with somebody, having coffee or tea, and saying, just tell me what you're going through. What are you finding difficult? Let me share what I've experienced. Not trying to give all the answers, be all the answers, but create an opportunity for conversation. Through that conversation, they come to realization and truth. And it helps them immensely. Just from that perspective of somebody's interested in me, somebody deems me worthy enough that they're willing to spend time with me. As simple as that. Makes the world of difference to somebody else that's never experienced it. So when we talk about being Jesus-like, it's not weird, airy-fairy stuff. It's everyday stuff that we take for granted. That Jesus says, pause, take a moment, reflect. Think of it differently. Think of it through your Father's perspective. And that's what Jesus calls us to live out in our communities. So that when people leave our conversation, that they feel valued and they feel loved. That's our challenge. That's our challenge for this week. And that's why I'm excited about next week's message. It's even better than this week's. So invite a friend, invite a colleague, and let's just wrestle honestly and earnestly with how to neighbor. How good a neighbor am I this week? And just be more Christ-like for this coming week. Let's close our eyes and pray. Father, we thank you that we can engage your word and get a view through a window into a situation that played out 2,000 years ago. And you could give us a new perspective on something that impacts how I live my life practically. And thank you that you've called us to live that out to the people around us. And that I can pray that for us as a faith community, through your Holy Spirit, we would view people differently. We would see people and see how much you love people. And we would interact with them from that perspective. And we thank you for that. Amen.